Welcome to the Business Leadership Series, where we engage with leaders who are making an impact on their worlds and who want to share their knowledge and experience for your personal and professional growth. The following interview is designed to inspire you to become the best leader you can be. Your host, Derek Champagne, is the founder and CEO of The Artist Evolution, a full-service agency building successful brands, marketing tools, and campaigns, and also the author of the best-selling book, Don't Buy a Duck. And now, let's begin today's Leadership Series interview.
Welcome to the Business Leadership Series, where our goal is to inspire you to become the best leader that you can be. I'm excited about our guest today, a former music executive who launched his own Nashville-based ticketing company, Project Admission. Stephen, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Derek. Thanks for having me.
Stephen Glicken, you have a company at revitalizing the way that music ticket industry is working. Been featured in Billboard, have teamed up with acts such as the Zac Brown Band. I'll let you talk about some of your background, but you've worked with some really cool artists, Paul McCartney, Kenny Chesney, and then in the early days, some cool artists like P. Diddy, Toni Braxton, Ghostface Killah, Wu Tang Clan. Very cool, diverse background. I love it. My favorite kind of story. So, hey, if you'll start us off, kind of talk to us, just let us get to know you. Our listeners like to know about the person, some of your background. Where'd you grow up? What got you in the music business? Let us hear just about you and your journey.
No problem. And yeah, I've definitely not been bored. I mean, you want to go deep, you want to go like background deep, like
Let's
origin. So
let's do it.
You know, I think I was one of those fortunate people that by the time I was 15, I played a show. I was like a freshman in high school, played a show as a drummer for a seniors party. And just playing that one show, it was kind of everything up until then. I could never kind of tell you, like, I could never answer that question. Like, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, what's your favorite? I was like, I don't know. Like, I'm too young. How do I know what I want to do yet? Until that day when I played that first show. And then I knew from that moment that I wanted to be in definitely music, but entertainment for sure. And I basically from then on had kind of 100% focus on that. There was a very brief stint where I did a little sidetracked and studied potentially going down the path of astronomy and physics, and then realized to do that meant only doing that. So went right back to music. But you know, I originally was a musician and decided very quickly that I did not want that to be my career. I decided that like really early on. And so I kind of saw the next step as getting into production. So I went to a school in Orlando called Full Sail in 1999, which at the time was a great school, but it's pretty small. I think it's gotten pretty big these days. Right. But from there, I put out the one and only resume I've ever put out in my entire career, which is a BS resume because it was a college resume, and got a job at a studio in Miami called Circle House, which is owned by Inner Circle, the band, you know, Bad Boys, those guys. So, you know, came in there, was wrapping cables, was doing grunt work, and maybe a year into being there, Puff Daddy came down to do 5 records from conception to mastering. It was P. Diddy, The Saga Continues. It was Faith Evans, G-Dap, Carl Thomas, and 112. And it was 24-hour-a-day sessions, and I basically just slept at the studio. It's where I got my first credits, working with on the P. Diddy record. From there, basically everybody else in the studio, because of the grind, I guess that was the other engineers that were there, kind of left. And I ended up pretty quickly becoming, you know, kind of the head engineer there. Wow. And for, you know, the next couple of years, it became this pretty massive destination for, you know, hip hop and R&B. So from there, I worked with everybody from, like, as you mentioned, like Toni Braxton and to TLC, to the Cash Money Millionaires, to No Doubt. Awesome. Did that for a while. Then from there, after I left that studio, I went freelance and got a call to go work with Ghostface Killah and the Wu Tang Clan. And I show up and Ghost is like, "You're only here for like 3 days, right?" And I'm like, "I guess so." And then 3 days later, he's like, "You're not going anywhere, right?" And then for like 2.5 years, I was working with Ghostface.
Would you go on the road with them too, or was that all studio?
All studio. We were in Miami, and then then it started mixing stuff in New York with him, both in the city and then doing stuff in Staten Island. Okay. But did like the whole Pretty Tony album with him, like recorded, mixed, and you know, most of the time it's just me and him in the studio. And a bunch of the next record, Fishscales. But at that point, I also worked with like De La Soul, and then kind of everybody else in the Wu Tang at some point or another throughout that process. At that point, I went to Puerto Rico to go produce a couple records. It was like a rock record and a merengue record, and ended up living there for 2.5 years. So the gentleman who brought me down, we hit it off, and there was at the time this tax credit for film. It was like a 42% tax credit for film, which was pretty massive, and there was nothing in the US yet. It was just New Zealand, South Africa, and Canada. So we decided to try to build a film studio. So we bought an old country club just outside of San Juan. We had a 5,000 cap venue. We started throwing shows. We like flew Armin van Buuren down, did a rave. We're doing like reggaeton shows, built a couple recording studios, started a production company. We were doing a lot of stuff. And this is when the genre reggaeton was just first kind of exploding. Daddy Yankee and Gasolina, if you're familiar. And we ended up kind of co-managing one of the big duos at the time, this group Zion and Lennox. And they were doing very well and touring all over the world and playing, everything from Staples Center to Madison Square Garden. And they were kind of generating real money, and it was kind of helping fund all the other crazy stuff that we were doing. But I had met my wife in New York 2 weeks, my now wife, but met her 2 weeks before I moved to Puerto Rico. And so the whole time I was down there, I was back and forth between Puerto Rico and New York. And came a point where it was either her or Puerto Rico. Very easy choice. Moved to New York. And at that point, I ended up connecting with this guy, Ben Bronfman, who's Edgar Bronfman Jr.'s son, the Seagram's family, and his father owned Warner at the time. And Ben and I decided the first time we met to kind of start the first sustainably-minded record label together. First time we met, we had French fries and coffee on the Upper West Side and talked about life, the universe, and everything, and kind of named it, came up with the concept, and then I went home and wrote the entire business plan over the weekend. And then the next week, Ben introduced me to his father, Edgar, and I went and pitched him. And then the week after that, essentially, I was on the top floor of the Warner building, and Ben and I started the record label. The first thing we put out was Live Earth, which is Al Gore's big global concerts. And we did that in partnership with Warner Brothers at the time, with Tom Wally was running Warner Brothers Records. And then we did a big benefit compilation for a good friend of ours, this guy, Billy Parrish, who ran the Energy Action Coalition, which is the largest youth-based environmental coalition at the time. Billy now runs a company called Mosaic, which is a huge solar lending company. And then and we got, like, for that compilation, I got like exclusive gratis tracks from everybody from like Feist and Muse and Bloc Party, and we got Feist to give us a track about 2 weeks before she did her famous iPod commercial, which was good timing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then we signed a bunch of indie bands, and we bought a school bus that ran off of biodiesel. We were driving the bands around. We were doing 360 deals with these artists, which means we were participating kind of all parts of their career. So we were helping on the touring side and creating sustainable merch lines, doing a ton of stuff. And then from there, I met this guy, Matt Jones, who was a young concert promoter based out of London. And he helped put on some of like Adele's first shows and Ellie Goulding and Mumford & Sons. And he spun up this direct-to-consumer ticketing business out of his house in London called CrowdSurge. And the whole concept was take an allocation of tickets and wrap it in an artist brand and in their voice and allow them to sell directly to their fans. It was kind of like, if you look at an artist's career, the kind of everything that they're doing is in their voice and in their brand, and then the ticket is just passed off to a third party. And so we were helping them own that. And it was the kind of like pre-sale fan club model. So Matt spun that up in London. It was about 4 people in London, and I came on as like the first one in the US. And so there was about 5 of us at the beginning, and we ended up growing that company to be about 150 people and became kind of the largest direct-to-consumer artist ticketing business. We then ended up merging, and we were working with everybody from Adele to Paul McCartney to Metallica. And then I moved to Nashville about 8 years ago now to get out of the city. And I always make this joke, but I moved to Nashville to make babies, successfully made 2 local Nashvillians. And from there, we started working with all the country guys like Kenny Chesney and Eric Church and Lady Antebellum and Dierks Bentley. And we ended up merging in June of 2015 with a company called Songkick, which is a concert discovery service. We thought, let's take the demand that Songkick had and put it with the supply that we had and see what we can do with it. We took the name Songkick because it was a consumer brand. And then all of us at CrowdSurge kind of ended up is the exec team for the joint company.
Okay.
And then, there's a colored ending to the business with the giant antitrust lawsuit. And then, which was a very interesting experience. But basically from the experience with Songkick, I was kind of the tip of the sword helping these artists sell tickets in over 70 different countries. I spent a year and a half kind of spending time in South America, helping build our operations out down there, and gave me a really unique perspective, which has led to what we're doing at Project Admission.
And so we'll jump into what you're doing now in just a minute. I'm excited to talk about that. But first of all, thanks for sharing your story. I like the long version because
sorry, a bit long-winded.
No, it's just fun to hear. And my story's got a lot of zigs and zags as well, and I can't tell it in 30 seconds. There's just too much to it. And what I love about stories like yours, and I like to let them breathe, is because it's fun to hear the little layers, which we're going to dig into here in a second. But we go, well, that one ended interestingly, and there's a lot of nuances there.
There's a lot behind. There's a lot behind what I just said.
I know there is.
All those
even
points.
The moves to Nashville and Puerto Rico. I mean, there's like 5 lifetimes in there, and that's really cool. And I love that you live your life that way. I can relate to your kindred spirit in that way. I want to dig in a little bit. Talk to me. We're not going to stay on failure or adversity, but give me a couple moments in that, because it all sounds great. It's awesome. You've got a great business mind. You're obviously great with what you do with music. You're an amazing engineer, producer, obviously all those things. I've seen that you've formed some great partnerships. You've identified how to do that, which is a testament to what you do. So there's a lot between the lines there that's really cool to see. But also, do take me for a minute though and tell me about some of the what are some of the challenging parts of that journey, some of the valleys, just for a minute, because you're out of it now and you've done so many cool things, but even with something winding down, that's tough to have happen too. So take me to a couple valleys and then let's figure out how you got out of them.
Yeah. So, if we add a layer of the story going back, what I was doing in Puerto Rico, we had no idea what we were doing. We were just figuring it out.
Right. Same
thing moving into the record label. We were finding our way through, and particularly with the record label at that time, it was the kind of movement into the digital world. It was happening. It already happened, but it was really tipping over. Yeah. And it was also the new age of kind of 360 deals, which was a lot to take on as a record label. You're basically, acting effectively as kind of a manager as well. The biggest, I think, the huge takeaway that I had from the record label was learning what you do well and what you don't do well, and learning how best to put people around you who do certain things better than you do, and kind of delegating properly. I did not know how to do that with the record label, so I took on way too much, and I did a lot of things very average or bad. Or poorly.
Is it because you wanted to have help control the creative process to help make the shows a quality outcome, or what do you think was a mindset? A lot of people do that. All of us do.
I think the mindset was probably fear and overcompensation, feeling like imposter syndrome. I think is probably the root of it, right? Like you're standing in a position where you've got these bands behind you that are depending on you. You've got this large corporation on top of you that there's money coming from.
Right.
And, you're sitting at the helm of this thing trying to make it all work.
Right.
And, I don't think I had enough humility in me to know how to ask for help in the right way. And I think that you learn over time that, and I think the next experience with Songkick is what taught that piece, and working with an insanely incredible team. And finding those kind of how much output you can have and how much better you are when you surround yourself with people that are smarter than you.
So a couple other thank you again, and thanks for indulging me. We do this show a couple reasons. One is we want to learn from great guests, but I'm just personally very curious. This is how I grow, and so I like to ask questions. And so one of the things that's interesting to me is the timeline. You were getting into the music business about the time I was getting out, and it had been done the same way for a long time, and around 2000 it started to change, right? So you're basically coming in around the digital revolution. Anything there? I think I
was cutting tape when I first was engineering.
Yeah, but you came in and you thrived in it.
Yeah, I was cutting tape and it went straight to digital very shortly after it started.
It's crazy.
And so I think what propelled me is that I became really fast and very good at Pro Tools.
Yeah.
And the patience level in the studio just absolutely disappeared overnight.
Wow.
So
yeah, no
if
kidding.
you couldn't act fast, you could not sit in the hot seat.
Right.
And I just got really good at acting fast.
Super cool. I love what you've done in the industry and how you've thrived in it. Tell me about when you talked about a merge. What was that like? Were there any challenges mixing the two cultures together? I just had a meeting yesterday with somebody that just merged and then realized after 2 weeks that they needed to stay home because they were getting in the way. They're like, they have founders too. So tell me about navigating that. A lot of people don't think about that. They think of a buyout or a merge and it's either the end goal, but what are the nuances that you experienced with doing something like that? Like, just give us some fine details, however you want.
Yeah. I mean, it's an insane thing, right? Like, I don't know what the percentage is, but it is a very, very high percentage of companies that merge. It does not go well.
Right.
I think the culture clash is the biggest aspect to it.
Right.
So the CrowdSurge team was all big, boisterous music industry, shoot from the hip, like act fast kind of, personality types. And the Songkick team was birthed out of Y Combinator, product guys and engineers.
Right.
And so you can only imagine like the communication barrier between those two. I think at some point in the merger, there was maybe one person we identified was the translator between both sides.
Wow.
There was so many uncomfortable, long, grinding meetings with the business side and the product side, sitting in a room trying to kind of get the product and the business and everything to align. I mean, that was it was incredibly difficult.
What are some of the big takeaways
those personalities
maybe
together?
For someone that's about to go through that or considering it? What are some takeaways or cautions to watch for?
I mean, the thing that I took from that and that I apply to project admission is it's communication, and it is making sure that that anything that is being discussed, pitched, presented, or thought about on the business side is vetted and expressed to the product side of the business to make sure that those two things are aligned, and making sure that the context and the strategy around the business is as best you can kind of explain to the product side so that these things align, because the thing you don't want is to build a product that the business can't use or doesn't need.
Right.
And so it's really hard to kind of keep, I'm kind of obsessive over it, just given the last experience. And it was obviously taking two different companies to put them together. It was a different experience than starting it from zero, but I'm pretty obsessive about making sure that the communication relative to the business and the product are always fully aligned.
Yeah, that's great advice. Let me ask you this: as with all the background experience you've had now, how do you go into new projects, new ideas, new passions? Like, do you go in with caution because of some of how you've been burned? Sometimes you go in even more confidently. Just what's your approach to taking on new projects, new passions, new businesses? What does that look like for you?
There's a benefit to perspective. And I think, I don't think that caution is the right word for it. I think that because of the perspective that I've gained through those different experiences. And again, like, it was through all the bad stuff that you learn, right? Like, that's really what you learn. It's like when you hit those trials, and like, that's where you get it. And there's been a lot of trials in that story that I told you.
Right.
And so I think having that perspective, it's easier to identify when you're faced with whatever the situation is, whether it's a new partnership or building a product or any kind of aspect, to know that there's maybe 12 roads you can go down with each one of those.
Right.
And the fortunate thing in perspective is, that 10 of them go nowhere good. And because you can see around the corner a bit better, and it allows you to focus on the two that you should be focusing on. And it just creates a kind of a better efficiency. I think the other thing is just communication. Like, I am a huge fan of transparency and communication. And I think the better we communicate, and the better that kind of there's no definitive statements being thrown around. It is a conversation, and going back to that comment about surrounding myself with people that are smarter than me. Is it's not like it was necessarily a completely and absolutely horizontal, organization, but the decision-making process is achieved through good communication and leveraging all the smart and experienced people with great perspective around me and around us to help make great decisions, but not thinking that I know better.
Yeah, that's great. And, and it's a learning experience too. And I like your example of, if there's 12 roads and you at least know 8 of them not to take from the burns you've gotten in the past or the lessons you've learned. If someone from the outside doesn't take quote unquote risk, and I've been in the situation before, will look at me exploring those 4 roads and think, what are you doing? but there's a formula to it, right? At least you know what not to do in some categories. Exactly.
And it is huge to know what not to do.
It is, right. Yeah, man, thanks for sharing that. I love to hear the way it's phrased from different entrepreneurs, especially ones that have your kind of experience. All right, we've got just a couple minutes left. I want to go into what you're doing now. So take us into your new business and give us just the highlights of how that started, what the goal is for it, and then so our listeners can understand more about what you're doing.
Yeah. So, whereas my last business in ticketing was fairly combative, we were locking arms with the biggest artists in the world and pushing really hard against the promoter and ticketing structures in those 70 different countries we were selling in. This is not that. I think, again, going to the perspective gained by dealing with the entire supply chain as we did in the last one, it gave me a good lens onto the different perspectives, from like the venue to the ticketing company to the web company to the mobile app to the artist, the promoter to the team. And, gave a pretty, again, interesting perspective, which allowed us to kind of find a fit that we are aiming at kind of Switzerland, right? Like, we are not trying to unseat the current infrastructure within ticketing, but rather kind of add a layer and help connect the dots between the disparate pieces within ticketing. And so, the team is, I've got two co-founders, and both have different backgrounds. One, Jordan Stone, came from, early on as one of the first kind of employees with Taylor Swift, and then had a startup in SF and moved back to Nashville. And the other is this guy, Tom Giles, who had a company called Stage Block, where if at Songkick and CrowdSurge, we were working with all these artists to sell tickets, Tom was doing everything else for them at Stage Block. So he was like the entire online presence for Metallica. So the website, the e-commerce, the fan club, the email marketing, and the whole business was built to kind of organize and contextualize actionable data. He ended up going through an acquisition and then exiting. And so our team is split between kind of ex-Stage Block developers who built products at scale and ex-CrowdSurge and Songkick ticketing executives. So like our head of business development is this guy, Josh Barron, who wrote the book Ticketmasters, which is kind of like this definitive history of ticketing.
Oh, wow.
So it's a very, very experienced team. And so we basically have built an ecosystem that integrates into any ticketing platform and helps simplify the transfer and exchange of tickets is one aspect. And we built a number of different tools to help do that, from transferability to direct sales to resale. And then the other piece is helping kind of sell more tickets through distributed commerce. So we have the ability of leveraging brands and influencers to help drive more sales. So when we work with a sports team, we have the ability of, the way I think of it, and the thing that's really connecting and resonating, is that in ticketing, it's a very complicated industry. It's not like selling a t-shirt. It's very political. There's a lot of complicated aspects, and we can go on for hours talking about ticketing. But what is happening in ticketing is and particularly in sports, they've gotten very good at the when and how much in selling inventory. And we are basically creating a better where. So right now, the where is typically a ticketing brand. And we have the ability to kind of lock in with a brand sponsor or a local organization or a fan or an influencer and help create a better narrative for kind of context switching how you can manage your inventory for any kind of given season.
Who's your customer?
So we do integrations with ticketing platforms. And that's, we get integrated access to tickets. We're not trying to build a business where we're disconnected. We are integrating into the infrastructure. And then our clients would be the rights holders. So the sports team or an artist or whoever kind of those tickets, who controls that inventory. And then they use our tools to help move their tickets around.
Very cool. Stephen, if our listeners want to learn more about you, where can they go?
You can just go to projectadmission.com. We've got some basic information there, but I think there's a link to reach out. Feel free to reach out if you got any questions, and the team could likely get back to you.
Man, awesome. Thank you so much for being our guest. Any final thoughts that you want to share with us today?
No, all good. I appreciate you taking the time, and thanks for having me on.
Hey, Stephen, it's a pleasure. Again, Stephen Glicken, he's the co-founder of Project Admission, got a great background. Check out what he's doing. And Stephen, we look forward to watching the next great things that you're doing and seeing what happens next on your journey.
Thanks, Derek.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Business Leadership Series, where we engage with leaders who are making an impact on their worlds and who want to share their knowledge and experience for your personal and professional growth. This interview was designed to inspire you to become the best leader you can be.